Wendy Patrick is going to join us. She's a regular on our show now. We love having you on because you bring to the table a lot of different perspectives on these unfortunate stories. Wendy, we were talking during the commercial break, and you say you're fascinated by him being declared mentally ill?
I don't know.
Or kind of it's interesting to you? Why do you think that?
You know, it is interesting, I will say, that the whole, psychology of the criminal mind is fascinating to us all.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to know, gosh, what in the world motivates these people? Why would you do this? Why were you able to lead a seemingly normal life up until some precipitating event? You actually see that kind of thing both with James Holmes and now with Wade Michael Page. Things are sort of falling apart before an act of violence. So we say random act of violence, but when you look at what happened immediately beforehand, maybe it wasn't so random. But now this latest, declared criminally incompetent, mentally ill, I know different states use different terminology. We would have probably seen that coming had we known some of the red flags beforehand. We saw a little bit of that when we all watched that video that was taken when he was 18. Obviously, when we heard about the now infamous spiral notebook, we see some more indications of that, maybe more towards paranoid schizophrenia. But we don't yet have any information on that with the Wade Michael Page shooting at the Sikh temple.
Which brings us to our next topic. And obviously this happened Sunday. It was breaking news on our show, and obviously another devastating shooting story here. What was your first thought when you heard about this shooting?
Oh gosh, our hearts go out to the victims, first of all. That's what we all think. Then people start to think, is it just a coincidence that it comes 2 weeks after the Colorado shooting? You know, one of the things that gets a lot of press every now and then when there's two catastrophes close in time is this copycat idea. And in fact, around the country, we've seen at least 2 arrests of copycat shooters. Thankfully, the crimes were thwarted. But folks who had done something, an act in furtherance of committing some sort of an act like was committed in Colorado. But to link these two that way, there are a lot of very significant differences. One of the significant differences is that James Holmes was protected from being shot. He came in full SWAT gear, you remember that. And we all know now that, of course, the Wade Michael Page not only was not protected, but ended up shooting himself. Of course, the first wave of reports that came in claimed he'd been shot by law enforcement. Now, of course, we know that he was shot once, but that he actually turned the gun on himself. So you have a difference in motive. You also have a difference in sort of the character in which this was played out. You have James Holmes saying, I'm the Joker. We don't have anything being spoken by Wade Michael Page. Nothing. According to anybody that was in the temple, he just, according to them, walked in and started shooting. So we can't really tie these two together, except chronologically, temporally,
very
by
close
the fact.
together, yeah.
One seemingly totally defined by hate, right? And the other seemingly defined by, obviously they're both a little bit off the deep end, but you don't get that. Hate has not been equated into the conversation with James Holmes.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is one very, very distinctive fact. You've got an enormous amount of evidence, including being significantly enough entrenched into the hate rock community that the Southern Poverty Law Center in Montgomery, Alabama actually not only knew who he was, but had been monitoring his behavior for a number of years. Whereas, of course, with James Holmes, you have him targeting a sort of random location where there's going to be a lot of people, but you don't know anything about them demographically that would establish that as a motive for selecting that movie theater. So
hard to really say that the Sikh shooting, the Sikh temple shooting was a copycat, but what about other copycats? That's what we all are thinking about right now, whether, a shooter has the same motivations as Wade Michael Page or James Holmes.
Yes, that's a great question, Courtney, and that's what we're all looking at now. There's been a lot of copycat crimes that have been allegedly tied to movies in the past. We remember movies like Natural Born Killers, even Clockwork Orange, which was actually, as you probably don't remember, Courtney, you're too young, maybe Jeff remembers, but was actually taken out of
This
theaters.
will be Wendy Patrick's last appearance on our morning show.
Right. Not if Courtney has anything to say about it. But that was a movie that was actually yanked out of the theaters by the director for a while because of the danger is it inspiring people people to actually copy what they see. You know, we give people a lot of credit when we say, oh, this was a copycat. Sometimes we find out they didn't even know of the prior acts of violence. Now, in an internet media savvy world, it's easier to assume that we all have probably heard of what's going on around the world in this arena. But copycat crimes, you don't just get normal people deciding one morning to go out and commit a copycat crime. What you see most often is someone that's already predisposed, perhaps, or considering.
Had a plan already.
Right.
Yeah.
And the copycat issue is, how do you do it? How do you do it that if you're sensation-seeking, media-seeking, attention-seeking, or wanting to get away with it most easily? Perhaps you might be inspired, I hate to use that word, by copycats to see how can I get away with it the way I want to plan it.
All right. Wendy Patrick, always great to have you on.
Hate to end on that note.
I know, I know. You always bring up some very interesting points, though,
Thank
and
you.
we appreciate you coming on this
Nice to
morning.
have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.